Welcome to LongboxParadox, episode 20. Today we're going to be talking about a bunch of books, but I want to start off right off the top with a rant, and I apologize. I kind of warned in the preview that this was going to happen, and so I was working overnight last night at my job, and I got the weird text about 3 in the morning from a friend saying, hey, probably shouldn't read Heroes in Crisis number 8. So, that little red flag made me actually want to go pick it up because my curiosity was just flaring because, like, what could be so bad to get a text message at 3 in the morning? So I got home from work, downloaded it, and boy, was I surprised that it surpassed even my low expectations and horror of what was to expect. So the book basically was Wally West doing a confession. My theory was right that they actually telegraphed pretty hard that Wally was the killer. Spoilers, I'm sorry, but this story is bullshit. I'll just say right now, do not buy it. Don't even buy the trade. This just is bad. It's bad writing. It's bad use of a character that was just brought back. It's this weird fascination that Tom King has with having to deconstruct characters constantly. Even ones that people know so well, you don't really need to deconstruct them. It works for Vision, it works for Mr. Miracle. Those are characters that, yeah, they had some runs, but for the most part, the audience, they haven't had stories that have really broken them down to any degree. Batman's been deconstructed to death, and he continues to do it monthly, bi-weekly. Just, I've had enough. And now Wally West, who was my Flash. I grew up with Wally as the Flash. Barry Allen was already pretty much gone when I started collecting. So I grew up with Wally. I grew to really like Wally. And it made me happy seeing Jeff Johns bring him back in Rebirth. And then, of course, it's like DC's editorial departments don't talk to each other. Wally really missed his family until he almost hooked up with Donna Troy. Him and Arsenal were kind of feuding because they were both lusting after her. But then again, afterward, his family and ex-wife drive him to have to go away and basically commit murder and unleash a power that he has never displayed before, ever, that this explosion that just killed everyone, and simultaneously decides to cover up the crime. This is the same guy that was so offended by what the Justice League did on the satellite when they brainwashed Dr. Light. This is the same guy that testified against Barry when he broke Eobard Thawne's neck. But okay, he committed this giant crime, killed himself also, which, again, the pseudoscience and bullshit in this. But before I go further down this rabbit hole, I just want to say Clayman and Mitch Jared's art were on point in this episode, or issue. It was great. It's a shame that it had to be just driven down by the dreck that is this story. I also got to share the wealth today and kind of get someone else pissed about this story. On Instagram, I've kind of been interacting with a user who's also a YouTuber and uses Instagram brilliantly to do comic reviews weekly and New Comic Book Day. She goes by, it's either D Comic Queen or DC Comics Queen. Either way, she does a great job. Real big game hunter collector. I'd been interacting with her, and she had posted her haul for today. I was like, "Oh, did you read Heroes in Crisis 8?" And I said I was going to be going on a rant tonight, which I kind of am. And she was like, "No, good rant or bad rant?" And I was like, "You'll have to read and kind of see." And then, not long after, she posted the cover to Heroes in Crisis saying "pissed," and we both kind of have an agreement about this book and the writing on it that I'm happy that someone else kind of agreed with me, because sometimes I feel like I'm just screaming in the dark at things. It was bad enough that we're actually talking about doing, when the series is over, a live video talking about our thoughts and feelings on it. And again, she's a great person to follow on Instagram. She's also on YouTube. Just great user, great content creator. So if you're a collector like I am, or just have a passion for comics, she has an exuberance that I think is healthy. I will post her Instagram and everything on the video right there. So with that being said, this was a downer. I can't fathom having anybody just putting any more effort into collecting this, buying it, reading it. I don't think there's any coming back from how horrible this issue was and this series has been so far. I don't want anybody to think that I hate Tom King or these are personal attacks. This is my feelings on what I felt has been a just bad run on Batman, a bad run on this. I like his other stuff. And I had someone say to me, well, you liked Identity Crisis. Identity Crisis was a mystery. It had real, like, hunting down who it was, shaking down villains. We also had this bad history come up of the Justice League brainwashing people. And just, there's just something really wrong with this. And I'll be honest, the way this painted mental illness was bad. Just horribly bad. And I feel like it does nothing but add more stigmatism to it. In all honesty, I suffer from bipolar, so I know what it's like to kind of have this stigma of what people consider a mental illness or something that makes you different. Probably a little too honest. But I just felt like that people know where I'm coming from on that. So I've spent enough time on this. You can see for yourself. I don't recommend spending the money on it in any way, shape, or form. And again, follow DC Comic Queen or D Comic Queen. It's one of those weird way it's spelled on there. It could go either way, but again, brilliant person to follow. So now to the stuff I read and didn't get me steaming hot. Right off the bat, we'll go with IDW's Amber Blake. This series is a great mixture of a little bit of Alias, not that one, the Alias that was on TV with Jennifer Garner. Also a little bit of Velvet by Ed Brubaker. It's the spy stuff, undercover. There's real hurt there. She's trying to stop someone who basically molested and hurt her friend. And becomes a super spy. There's training montages. There's the love affair. It's almost like a Bond book, sort of, but more team-oriented. There's undercurrents of conspiracy. Very under-the-radar book. Number one had blown up because it was short-printed. It got some good press. There was also a variant that did very well in the secondary market. This one is kind of around the same. The story has been consistent. Butch Gui's art has been very good. And you put that together, another low print run, and the variant is starting to pick up on the aftermarket and going to be hard to find. So just putting that out there for the spec people. I'd put this as probably a solid 6 out of 10. There's something there. I want to see it build a little bit more, but liking what I'm reading so far, and it looks like it's kind of a low-key hit for IDW. And moving on to DC Comics, and my favorite of the Bendis Superman books, it is Action Comics 1010 with art by Steve Epting, which I loved his art on Winter Soldier and many other books. This follows Clark and Lois in disguise. They are trying to find out more about Leviathan. In this also, you have Agent the DEO director Bones, trying to figure out where he's at, and the former Manhunter Kate Spencer shows up, and her lawyer, she's a lawyer by day. They're kind of doing a back and forth, and he says, "You're not her," and he goes, "You know, I have superpowers," and then she walks out. The face changes. Very spy versus spy stuff in here. Waller is in the Fortress of Solitude in the Bermuda Triangle, with Jimmy Olsen of all people. Clark and Lois meet up with Tiger, agent of Spiral, which it's great seeing him again. I was a big fan of Tim Seeley's run on Grayson. It was something different, and Tiger was one of those characters that I really grew to like in the series. And he explains how the person who created Spiral also created Leviathan to give them something to do. And Talia really inherited it. She never actually created it. Just all around solid issue. Builds up the tension of what's going on. The solid 8 out of 10 for me. I can't wait to see more of this. And this is the book I really wanted all the Supermans to be. But this has definitely been the standout over the Superman self-titled book. Just something so much more here that's going on compared to the Superboy Jor-El stuff, which it's getting there, I guess. It's not horrible, but I just wish there was more to it. So moving on from there, we have Marvel Comics. And since I'm going to see Avengers Endgame tomorrow, Thanos was on my brain, so Thanos #1 came out. And it's looking into the past of how he came to have Gamora become his daughter, and his obsession with taking down the Magus, who is a alternate reality kind of form of Adam Warlock, but he's blue and has kind of an afro. Really nutty character. So Thanos in this, he kills crew members. We see 2 members of the Black Order there, Ebony Maw and Proxima Midnight. And every time he kills a crew member, he all of a sudden has orders for them. He's still hunting death. And as he's following Magus, he gets to Gamora's planet. And as he's going through, the girl says, Gamora as a child says that she sees death, and she's the first person other than Thanos who's actually seen her. And it kind of just adds to this history. They're retconning it a little bit to be a little bit more like the movie. Somewhat with, it's kind of mishmashing 2 different things together. It was solid. Ariel Olivetti was the main artist on it, and again, Ron Lim cover was the one I picked up. I wasn't over the moon because the last Thanos series that had been out with Cosmic Ghost Rider was so good that this unfortunately just didn't hold up to that. So I'm going to give this probably a 5 out of 10. It's not bad, but just not what I was needing at the moment. So the book I've been waiting for a couple of months since it was on hiatus. Descender ended, and now we have Ascender. Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen take you back to this universe they created, but now they're redoing world building all over again, where now the robots are gone, and magic is taken over, dark magic no less, like necromancy, and it's kind of like Big Brother now, where everybody has to worship Mother. Mother is basically the queen witch of the coven, and everybody's like, Mother is watching, Mother is watching, and all of a sudden they find a dead body, and they're trying to find out who is helping the USGC rebel against them. And it says there's a mage, a white mage, and starts fighting the necromancy, and the body blows up and leaves a robot head. Interesting stuff. Again, more planets we didn't see before, and they're kind of introducing it. There's these ships that are living. And then we go to another planet, and we meet Mila or Mila. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. It is Effie and Andy's child from Descender. And they basically are hermits in the hills that they are not succumbing to Mother's will, and they are free people. They are marked. And Mila is trying to trade at this post, and apparently if you're free people, you can't trade at this post. It's almost like black market. And she goes back home, and Andy's furious that she went down there. We find out that Effie has died fighting Mother. Don't really say what happened to her. She's no longer among the living, it seems. And the Mother convenes with basically the closest I can say. It's like the spirits of former mothers, and they're kind of she's telling her what to do, and one of them, who is the most recent, sees a hound that speaks backwards, being the downfall. And we go on, and Mila and Andy have had an argument, and she runs off. And when she runs off, she sees something drop out of the sky and fall. She goes to it, and what do we find? Andy's former robotic dog and Tim 21's companion, good old Bandit, and he's barking backwards. And the scene, end of the book, leaves you hanging. It was a great return to something that's familiar but a lot new, and I really enjoyed what it was giving us. Of course, it leaves you wanting more and finding out what exactly happened during that time that everything changed after the robots left. So, gonna give this 8 out of 10. Just Dustin Nguyen and Lemire just continue to be a great team. And again, they give you just enough to whet your appetite and make you want to go back and actually reread the end of Descender because it's been a while, but also salivate for the next issue to come out. Buy it, spec it possibly, because I know Descender had been optioned, so now you'll have the follow-up to whatever it's going to be, if it ever becomes anything, because of course anything option doesn't always pan out. And boy, it was just a solid book from Image. There was not a lot of covers I was like over the moon about, especially like spec wise. Of course, like the DCB variants continue to be solid. There wasn't one that was better than all the others, in my opinion. But pick out what you like. That's the easiest way to collecting. Just you see something that catches your eye, buy it. If it's something you like, buy it. Don't think about the spec. If it goes up, my theory always is have a number in your head. If it hits that number above, then you have to seriously think about selling. Yeah, so with that, I think I ranted enough. I went through the books fairly fast, and if there's something else you think I should be reading, recommend something, comment, share, subscribe, and as I added earlier, DC Comic Queen, D Comic Queen, give a follow, check out her YouTube, and buy more comics, read more. I can't exude my passion more for this. Of course, I'm recording this at 3:30 in the morning, so my passion can only go so far. But thank you for sharing time with me and taking time out of your day to watch. And happy hunting and happy comic book day, new comic book day.